You twins, did you have this idea together to do this film?
Yeah, actually, in 2017, I know you guys remember Dolly, Lily, and Jane. They did the Emmys, and there was a lot of buzz around that. So after that happened, they started getting approached about the sequel, and they started really talking about wanting to do that sequel. So me and him, we kind of had a conversation. It's been a movie, it's been a song, it's been a musical, a TV show, now a sequel. So we initially wanted to document the life of 9 to 5. So that's what we initially wanted to do. But then through reaching out to Camille, who was another documentary filmmaker, going over the idea, she really did a deep dive, and that's how we found the organization, and we found Ellen, and we found Karen, and Lily Ledbetter, all the women's rights. So we now kind of say jokingly, when the 9 to 5 fandom met the 9 to 5 feminism with Camille, that's kind of turned into the still working 9 to 5 we have today.
So it does seem like in the film that you were taking a pretty good page from their decision to have a light touch on all this, and then you took a left turn and to examining these connecting the dots between then and the Me Too movement and Time's Up movement and so forth. So that was a conscious decision, or did that come about in the process of making the film?
So firstly, I just want to say thank you for all the audience for coming. We really appreciate it. And as with films, you make a film, but you make it for people. And the fact that you've all turned up today to see our film, I know that we're all really honoured. And we just want to say thank you to all of you.
Because if it was this cold in LA, no one would have showed up. So thank you.
I think going back to your question, I think it was really important. It's the film, as we've just mentioned, is rooted in an organisation and women coming together to talk about where they were in the early 1970s. There wasn't equal pay. There wasn't even a place to discuss, what their job description was. And so when we, initially thought of the idea, yes, it is fantastic to talk about Dolly, Lily, and Jane being in this wonderful film that was, amazing at the time and did discuss certain issues and was a comedy, but it was rooted in working women. And so we really wanted to talk about those working women from the early 1970s, but also where working women are today. So showing that evolution was, tantamount to making a good film as far as I was concerned.
I was going to say, it's not easy to do, but luckily 9 to 5 has had so many iterations, we could hit different parts of the women's movement, and we consciously edited that to do the 9 to 5 timeline with the women's movement timeline.
So was it difficult to bring all the cast together for these interviews?
Very much so. Luckily, as she said, we did Hollywood to Dollywood was a previous movie 10 years ago, and Dolly really loved that film. She called it the little documentary that could. So she followed the journey. So reaching out to her manager to be involved with the film, and he got the concept. He said, I really feel like if I get Dolly to sit down with you guys, it'll open the door. And it literally, after we got her, everybody. It still took 2 years with scheduling, but we still got them all. And Dabney was right before COVID. We interviewed him February 2020, and then a week later, the world shut down. So we were able to edit all the way through COVID.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then I will also add our actual first interview was Karen Nussbaum. So Karen gave us credibility, in regards to Jane Fonda as well, because Karen and Jane were such close friends. So I think, Karen probably said to Jane, they're all right. I think you can sit down with them.
I'll give one really funny. Me and Camille, we were on with Jane's manager, and so we're talking about doing the interview, and she just said, why do you want to make this film? And I don't know where I got it from, but we had just seen Jane Fonda in 5 acts, and in that whole thing, they give 90 seconds to 9 to 5. And I said, basically, in Jane Fonda 5 acts, you gave 9 to 5 90 seconds. We think it needs 90 minutes. And she goes, I got it. And then we got on the phone, Camille was like, where the hell did you get that? I was like, I don't know, but it came.
That was very good, though. It was great. Well, there is a 2-hour film and there's a lot to cover. But the interesting thing for me is that, I did 12, 15 some interviews with Jane, that she really downplayed her role on 9 to 5. And I mean, not in a totally humble way, but because she had, created a company to start making films addressing social issues, which she did brilliantly. But she really take a lot of credit on 9 to 5, and it seems like she was really the driving force behind it. And I learned that in this film. I really didn't know that. I sent her an email this morning. I said, "Why didn't you tell me all this?" But so, did it surprise you that Lily had all these doubts about this film? I mean, that surprised me too.
We had no idea. What Lily's interview, I'll never forget it because we laughed all the way through it, but we couldn't be heard on camera, so we were in the background just trying to hold back our laughs because she's
cracking us
so
up.
funny. But we never knew she wanted to leave the picture 2 times, and the audiences really love that because you've never known that about it. So we really loved finding those nuggets. But then I'll never forget being in Ellen's house when we were filming her, and she told the story about the boss that wanted the secretary to sew his pants when he still had them on, and we kind of looked at each other and our people that were there on the set, and we were just kind of like, it lets you know you're getting into issues that women were really dealing with in the time. So that kind of was the moment where I was like, this is more than the fandom of 9 to 5. This is going to turn into something bigger than that.
Well, obviously that meeting that they had with all the women and Bruce Gilbert being brilliant enough to ask that question at the end was kind of the spark, I think, of that made them understand what kind of movie they needed to make. Because it was, I mean, the whole creative process of this film, going from this very dark film to what it ended up being, I think you handled that so beautifully. So I congratulate you on that. It was very interesting to see that process. So just including Harvey in this film was kind of bold.
When our archivist was
Cringy
just
bold,
finding
but-
nugget after nugget after nugget, and when that one came in, it was just the initial shock of it's Harvey and what he's saying. But then through our relationship with Bob Greenblatt, who was the one who got it on the musical, he let us know he was actually a producer on it. So that took a whole nother level to know that in 2009 he was making that content in the musical, knowing what he was now doing behind the scenes. So that's why we decided to keep it in. And it's always the shocking moment because everybody's mouth drops on that scene, but I think it needs to be in there because it's part of the conversation.
Absolutely, and I mean, it kind of mirrors that I imagine a lot of men's reaction to the film was. They kind of saw it as funny. Isn't it funny that all these women in my company hate me? What was the critical response, by and large, to the film when it came out?
We just got nominated for a Critics' Choice. We didn't
I'm not
win, but we
talking-
went to New York. Yes, it was amazing.
But no, that's but that's wonderful. Congratulations. No, I was asking about the critical response to 9 to 5. I mean, we've got a little bit of that in there, but do you think that men took this film seriously? What do you think?
Well, the reviews from critics were kind of lukewarm. And however, the response from women office workers was through the roof. There would be an audience full of women, and that scene that's in the movie where Jane is at the that Xerox machine and the papers are flying out and she's getting all upset and her lip is starting to tremble, and people would stand up, office workers, and say, "Push the stop button." And I remember after the film came out, I was on a bus and I overheard this woman telling her seatmate, she said, "So he asked me to make the coffee and I said to him, I just saw 9 to 5 and I'm never making your coffee again." So, during the 70s, our job was to debate and win the argument. Yes, women are discriminated against. Women don't want to be at the bottom of the pay scale. But once that movie came out, that debate was over, and it was time for us to work on consolidating our power.
I'm going to actually ask someone this question. It's another surprise for you. We have Chris Saldo. Now, Chris was actually the second AD on 9 to 5. So can I get you to stand up for 1 sec? Can you answer that question as well? I'd really be... Yeah. How did men react to 9 to 5?
I think that at the time, I was thinking about this, and it sparked a lot of memories for me about the context when this movie was being made in 79 and 80. This was a major studio movie, and this was a workplace. And on stage 5 at 20th Century Fox, where we had that big set, when the 3 actresses would look beyond the 4th wall to the crew, it was an all-male crew. the female roles were basically the script clerk. It was called clerk back then. Now they're script supervisors, or the hairdresser. But everyone else was a male. So I think there was a general awareness that things were on the cusp of change. And if those three actresses were in a movie today and they would look out in the sea of faces behind the camera, it is a totally different demographic and look. I remember when Bruce Gilbert, when I was hired, Bruce Gilbert, I was in his office and he said, well, you're going to have to hire an assistant. And Jane and I would very much like if you hired a female assistant. And could you possibly hire a black or person of color? In my union, there were like 3, and they weren't available, So from that standpoint, there has been change, and it's been 40 years. So I hope that answered your question.
And
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that today, matters that used to be considered personal issues and individual issues are matters of policy, corporate policy, government policy, union policy. Pregnancy discrimination is against the law now. Sexual harassment is against the law. We don't have help wanted male and help wanted female ads in the newspapers anymore, and managerial jobs have opened up to at least college educated women. But today, in today's economy, there's still, we're still working. It can be harder to be a worker in today's economy than it was 50 years ago. But the good thing is that we're seeing an upsurge of organizing among baristas and warehouse workers and care workers and grad students and congressional aides. And support for unions is higher than it's been in 2 generations.
So wonderful. So your organization is still completely active in all of this.
Yeah, 9 to 5 is still reaching out to women in every state, and the union that we started, District 925, is still active in Washington State. But I have to say that the 80s were not a happy time for working women and for unionizing. The corporate America decided, we're not having this. We had an era of labor management relations that was pretty harmonious in the 50s and 60s, but we're kind of done with that. The world has changed, global competition, and they brought out anti-union consultants. And as you know, unionizing took a real dive. But now I have hope, because I think something is starting again and a sleeping giant is awakening again.
There's a real moment of just kind of shock when you realize after Virginia did become the 38th state that its ERA still has not passed. What is your confidence level in Biden making that happen?
I don't know. Right. I think that there's an old labor song that says, freedom doesn't come like a bird on the wing. You've got to fight for it, work for it, fight for it, day and night for it, and every generation's got to win it again. So there's never a time when you say, okay, now we can sit back, we've won. You're always reaching for the horizon, and there's always more to do, and we're always still working.
Do you have some stories that you want to tell from the making of the film that would be of interest to a group of filmmakers?
I'm going to add to that, actually. I mean, I think the biggest problem now is the Congress turning over. So I know that it was on Harris's and Biden's agenda to extend the deadline so the ERA could be passed. It's actually the archivist's job. So the archivist usually publishes the certification for the ratification. But because the deadline has been, the Virginia was passed after the deadline, that the archivist does not feel comfortable adding that to the legislation. So it's the deadline that needs to be extended. And I think that's no longer, the important part of the agenda. I think they want to get marriage, rights across which is which is hard for the ERA. And we have a lot of wonderful women in our film, Zoe Nicholson and Lily Ledbetter, who would really love to see that, especially in Lily's lifetime. But it may not happen, so I think that's it's hard. So some of the states are actually going in on their own ERA legislation, and that is passing statewide, but I don't know federally now when that's going to happen.
And I will say, I always channel Zoe Nicholson. She's been to a lot of Q&As, but when she's not there, she really follows what's happening. So when it passed, they put a bill in to say that it should be ratified, and they put a bill to say that the deadline in 1982 was unconstitutional, and they put it through the House. It passed the House overwhelmingly, and it's been sitting in the Senate on Mitch McConnell's desk. But now the Senate has flipped, so they do have faith that maybe it will go through now, because Zoe will always say anytime you hear about a deadline, it's put in place to take women back, because there's deadlines on rape kits, there's deadlines on the ERA amendment, and that's the only amendment ever that ever had a deadline put on it, because it was about women. So Zoe will really get fired up, but they let us know how the bills are going in Congress, and we're keeping up with it because we want to see it in their lifetime as well. And we have a niece who's 20 who's in the workforce, so these are issues that she's going to face her whole life as well.
So do you feel that the gender and other inequality, economic inequality issues are actually being addressed? Do you feel there's a great deal more to do, a big distance before we get to where we should be?
Huge. And, as I said, we're never going to get there. There's always going to be more to do. And something we realized early on in 9 to 5 was that, yes, there were anti-discrimination agencies, and yes, you could file a charge or file a lawsuit, but that wasn't enough. That wasn't going to be enough. And we were always going to have to bring the power of people taking collective action to put pressure on government, put pressure on employers, and make women feel that they can stand up and feel that sense of agency that was talked about in the movie so beautifully. It takes all of those things, and it's never going to just, you can't just pass a law and feel that your job is done.
And I'll say one thing consciously we really wanted to do. We know people love 9 to 5. Anytime we talk about this documentary, they love 9 to 5. So we knew getting Dolly, Lily, and Jane, the cast reunion, the new 9 to 5 duet with Dolly and Kelly, we knew that people would want to see that, but we kind of hide the medicine in the candy, because when we get you in the seat, we're going to still give you a message about women's rights. And, we usually ask the audience how many people didn't know the Equal Rights Amendment had not passed, and usually over half will raise their hands that they did not even know that hadn't passed. So, it's an issue that we feel like we want to get it out to a wider audience to try to see it.
Well, I think you did that beautifully in the film. I mean, as 9 to 5 was secretly subversive, I think your film is too. So, I just want to ask you about the duet at the end of the film. I don't think a lot of people.
Another documentary. That's another whole documentary.
Yeah, but I'm sure most people don't quite realize that was made for this film, the duet between Dolly and Kelly Clarkson. So how did you make that happen, and how did it work?
Shane McAnally is a really good friend of ours, and he's an EP on the film. So we went to Steve Summers and said, do you think Dolly would give us permission? Because she's let people do things with other songs, but nobody's ever touched 9 to 5. That's one that she's always kept. And he said, can I, do something with the arrangement? So Shane McAnally came back about 3 months later, and they played it for Dolly, and she squealed. She loved it. So then, go ahead. Don't
step on that, because you got to. So Steve Summers, who's Dolly's creative manager, he called and he said, "Are you guys sitting down?" And we're like, "Well, we are now." He said, "Dolly has had like a creative genius moment," and I was like, "I don't know what that is, but it sounds good." He says she's
Spiritual
played
awakening.
Spiritual awakening. She's played it over and over again, and she feels like that this is going to be a duet, and she knows exactly what she's going to do to it. So then that's how it turned into Kelly and Dolly performing it. And I mean, Dolly was just on Kelly Clarkson today. They did half of the new duet and half of the original, and then Dolly said, "That's for a new documentary called Still Working 9 to 5." So Dolly, Lily and Jane have been champions, but Dolly has just gone above and beyond with being like our champion. So we really appreciate it.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Did you ever get the three of them together in the same room?
Oh, that was impossible. possible.
COVID. Yeah, we were kind of all during COVID and just getting them where we could. But
Just Dolly alone, because she was going to London and here and there, and then we had to go to D.C. because Jane was doing Fragile Fridays. So the only way we could get her was to go to D.C. and film her, before one of the rallies. So we really danced around their schedules, but we always knew Dolly, Lily, Jane, and Dabney was a big pull to get all of their original interviews back.
Well, I think a lot of filmmakers in this room know how difficult it is for this scheduling. We just wish the people that gave us the money to make these films understand that, why it all takes so long. No, it takes so long because you're trying to get all
We
the
wish
things
we
done.
knew to get money to make the film because we all
self-funded.
self-funded. So we missed that
We,
step.
we did have one funder that came in, and that was Regina Scully from Artemis Rising. So she was fabulous, but the majority of it was all of us.
so now we're trying to find a home. If anyone can help.
So tell us about, I know you've been getting very good response to the film. Tell us a little bit about that and where it's going to be next.
Yeah, we've had amazing reviews. I think right now we're holding a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So we have all glowing reviews. We've won jury awards, we've won audience awards. We just got, like he said, the Critics' Choice nomination. But we've been told by our sales agent that we have landed in a shaky, volatile market. It's very hard to sell films, and right now we don't have a home. We don't have a streamer, or we don't have we don't have a streamer or distribution in place. So we're still doing the film festival circuit and just keeping things out there. And like Dolly on Kelly today was pretty amazing.
Well, we'll have to do something about that.
Thank you guys.
That's what we're hoping. I just want to make a shout out to one other person who is here, who is Mike Tabibi. Now, you saw him during the protest, the 9 to 5 protest, the 1973. He was the reporter that spoke up talking about women's rights. So please, Mike, stand up.
Bravo.
So that was another thing. His clip is one of over 1,000 pieces of archival we have in this film. So as filmmakers, I would give that tidbit to get that licensed as soon as you can, because we've got everything licensed for the film festival circuit, but then to wrap our heads around getting it worldwide rights, we're not even thinking about that right now.
Well, we are.
Thinking about it.
We
How
are
we're gonna
thinking
do it.
about that.
Here we are.
Of course you
So,
are.
Just in case anyone's so inclined, so if no streamer picks this up, we're going to have to self-distribute. So we need to get the extra clearances. So if anyone is so inclined, we have a GoFundMe. I know I hate to sound so gauche, but that's the reality of where we're in. So if anyone is excited about us distributing to the rest of America, we have a GoFundMe page to help us do that. That would be
and the
amazing.
world, because we've been to New Zealand, we've been into Portugal, we've been to Poland, we've been all over the world. So I think that Dolly, Lily, Jane, and 9 to 5, it resonates with so many people, not just here in America.
We got fourth actually at the Warsaw Film Festival. Overall, they voted us in, which we were very happy about.
Well, it deserves it. But just a filmmaker question here. Given that Jane produced 9 to 5, can't you just have automatic access to every clip there that you want to use everywhere?
Oh no. So I'll tell you. Okay, so with the 9 to 5 footage, that's all through. There's 14 minutes of total original film footage. So we went to try to get that cleared, and we were told 10-minute minimum. And I'm not even going to tell you the number we were quoted. I'm not even going to tell you the number. So then we found out about fair use. We found Michael Donaldson. Michael Donaldson has cleared the whole film, but Dolly was so amazing. We went to her with like 15 lines we needed her to say just so we could get clips cleared. And she did all of that for us. So the whole film has been cleared fair use, which is amazing.
And worldwide? Worldwide fair use?
60% of the archival is cleared for worldwide, and 100% is cleared for film festivals.
As long as new Dolly was talking about what old Dolly was doing in the film, we can use it fair use. So she went back and said specific things so we could get clips. She was great.
Oh, that's very clever.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions from the audience?
I loved it. Thank you so much. I wonder when you were putting it together, you obviously clarified the piece about women getting pregnant and they would be
For me, yes. Are we going to be honest here?
Yes.
So these guys are from the South, and they also wanted to make it for their people and their family.
Not necessarily. I know what she's saying, but there were really graphic scenes in here that really went into that. And when we're playing in Dolly's sandbox, because she says on the thing she's not political, you have to play in her sandbox. So we've got a lot in there, but a lot couldn't go in there, or we would be told we couldn't be in her sandbox. So that's
Hear that lovely duet that you love so much.
so there's ways you have to play in and out of it. So I feel like we covered a lot of issues in there without, like some people would say, hitting you over the head with it or doing the deep dive, because then I don't think it would have the following with Dolly that it has. And I'm being honest, we need her support. We really do.
Yeah.
Was that disappointing? Must have been disappointing for you as the director, though, to have to deal with that.
I wouldn't say disappointing. Every film you do, there has to be a level of compromise. And of course, it was a compromise we were all willing to take, because Dolly is such an integral part of the film. And I also respected, I'm not from here, and I also respected the guys, and where they're from and their perspective. And this is a collaborative film. And it's not just a collaboration between the three of us, it's a collaboration with the people that are in the film. And so it's important to respect everybody's position.
I mean, we have no problem with controversial issues. I mean, we're gay from the South, Southern Baptist, so we've made films about issues and things, but with this one particularly, what we were trying to do and what we needed to get from everybody being in the film, we had to step lightly on certain issues.
I
And
certainly
that's true of
understand.
organizing, too. When 9 to 5 started, we were in Boston, a largely Catholic city. And whatever our personal views were about a lot of different issues, we focused, and we didn't let certain issues become barriers to the people that we needed to join the organization. And when people would come to lunch with us and sit down, and the first thing, before they even sat down, they'd say, "I just want you to know I'm not a feminist." Okay, so that's okay with us. Let's get together on what we can unite on.
And honestly, if that issue had happened in the real film and maybe Dora Lee had to deal with one of the women at lunch that had an abortion, it would have probably been in there. But I felt like that wasn't an issue the film focused on, so that's why we kind of just tried to stay where we were headed.
And I think the other thing too, if Roe versus Wade had happened, maybe while we were making the film, that probably would have been different as well. But we'd already finished the film after that decision had been overturned.
Are there any other questions from anyone? Well, I have one last question. How did you all find each other?
We actually, John
45 years ago.
John Lavin, who directed our first film called Hollywood to Dollywood, he had done so many interviews with me and Larry, he felt like he wasn't getting genuine questions, so he brought Camille over, and he goes, "I want you to interview him and try to get more out of him." So that was initially the first time we met
I
Camille.
made them cry. Didn't I make you cry?
I think we cried. You threw sand at her eyes and made us cry.
What are some other films you have made?
So I've done a lot of documentaries in Australia. So I actually started off doing animal documentaries. So I used to travel around the world living in hides. So that was always really interesting. And then I came over, I made another documentary called Big Dreamers in Australia. And then I came over, Don't Hold It Against Me, making home shows for DIY. I created a show called Restored. I don't know if anyone's into restoration, but I did that. And then Gary and Larry asked me to be involved in this, and I jumped at the chance.
4 years ago.
Yes, 4 years ago, and here we are, which is fabulous. And then I got to meet wonderful Ellen and her co-founder Karen, who both are absolutely wonderful.
And her book is amazing.
Yes,
So
got to buy the book.
For sale at the reception.
Buy it here.
And we did reality stuff. So we won Twin Fear Factor. We won Twin Wipeout. Actually, we had to go do Wipeout to pay for our first documentary. So we won the $50,000 on
Won
that.
that Wipeout, which if you know that crazy obstacle course, that was a. Yeah, when we won that, Dolly goes, well, if they did that, they'll do anything to make this documentary.
I bet that stood you in very good stead with her, actually. She seems a very down-to-earth person. I'm sure she appreciated that, and the long road it was to get this film made. So congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, everybody.